r/AskReddit. What was your biggest shit? No going back now moment? This one is quite literally a not going back moment. As a Boy Scout at summer camp, we would always take large group hikes on the last day of camp. This particular camp in West Texas was located in the middle of a deep canyon and cut through with a small stream. The day before our hike day it rained a bit, but not too much to make us worry. It was drizzling in the morning when we got up, but we were Boy Scouts, so that obviously didn't stop us. So our long hike had us cross the small stream up the canyon maybe 10 to 15 times. No problem. And everything went great. After a while we get to a medium-sized pond that we all decided to go swimming in. That was fun, and we all had a blast. We get out and dressed and we keep going farther up a hill to continue our hike. We get to the top and we hear this wonderfully ominous rushing noise. We look over a ledge and see that the water in the stream was moving a bit faster than we remembered. A friend and I volunteer to go back and see what's happened. A flash flood had ripped through the area we had just left moments before. The water in the pond was at least 7 feet higher than it was 5 minutes before, and it was covered in foam and rapidly overflowing. We decided as a group to test our luck and go back to see if we could get out. But the last stream crossing had turned into a very fast moving river crossing. Needless to say, we literally couldn't go back, and we had to wait a long time to get help and get to the now almost flooded camp. Happened to a friend of mine in Philmont. He went to the bathroom and had to cross a small stream to get there. The sky opened up for a few minutes and he still hadn't come back. We heard yelling a little later and he was stuck because that small stream had quadrupled in size and was now a raging river. If you went to Philmont and didn't have a close call, did you actually go to Philmont? Mountain lions calling in the camp as you try to sleep at night. And then during the day, being stuck in an open field in the lightning position in an open field, while lightning bolts crash into the trees surrounding the clearing. And then nickel-sized hail starts pelting your back and covering the ground in a layer of white. All while you're soaking wet and the temperature is dropping into winter level cold in the middle of summer. Good times. Good times. Stepping off that sandbar I could barely reach to swim out to the girl, caught in a riptide. And not knowing how a riptide worked, it took what felt like hours, but spoiler alert, we made it. Too early in the season for lifeguards. I remember calling out to people walking their dogs on the beach, but we were so far out they didn't even look towards us. I'm sure she is eternally grateful that you took that step. Don't know. She was a friend of a friend and I barely knew her. I was trapped in a riptide as a young child. A stranger pulled me out and almost 30 years later I still remember his face and how emotional it was. Trust me, she remembers you. I pulled my cousin off the bottom of the pool at a YMCA over 50 years ago. I called him the other day after several years of not seeing him. And the first thing he said was how he tells his wife that if I wouldn't have saved him that day, he wouldn't be here. We are complete polar opposites on politics and religion. But that one act bonded us forever. Life is precious, no matter what you do or don't believe in. When I was younger, letting my older cousin talk me into a canoe ride down a flooded river. We'd planned it days in advance, but there was a lot of heavy rain in the area and the normally calm river was near flood level and quite rough. I really didn't want to do it, but I didn't want to let him down either, so I still went. I knew as soon as we saw the river this was a terrible idea. The whole thing was a shit show, and I honestly, though we were going to die, we had no control, and at one point we got stuck nose down, and a large rock. Knowing if we tipped out we were drowning. We somehow made it out and to the shore where we walked back with the canoe. Rule number 1 with any kind of paddle/unpowered water sport. If you have any doubts, stop. Even in a shallow river, that thing flips and conks you on the head. You drown. Wear your PFD. and follow your gut. Edit, because others have more effectively reworded it. I F and doubt. Don't geo out. I hopped a freight train once, and the moment it hits 15 to 20 miles per hour, you're just along for the ride. But the real no going back moment came when the train stopped on a siding outside Winnemucca. After waiting there for like 5 hours, I decided to walk into town and get some ice cream sandwiches. As soon as I got 50 yards from the train, I realized if it starts rolling now, I'll be too far away to chase it down. I'll just be stuck in this town for a while. Edit, for you kids out there, riding freight trains is dangerous and illegal, and dirty and loud and unreliable. Don't do it. Also, I should point out that Winnemucca is home to some of America's best Basque restaurants, fantastic cowboy heritage sites, and it's the gateway to the Black Rock Desert. It's got something for everyone, not just stranded hobos. There's definitely no going back from Winnemucca. TBF. This is how 90% of Winnemuccans ended up there. When I was about to get on the plane to my first semester of med school, my dad, never one for sentiment, said, "Well, you're now actually worth more dead than alive. Don't screw this up." The feeling when the plane takes off, knowing there's no turning back. It all depends on you. A scary feeling that is. True. In my time impersonating a pilot, that was usually the most unnerving feeling. Frank Bagmail Jr., is that you? Last summer I replaced my roof, standing on the ladder at the corner of the house with a shingle stripping shovel. I just stood there for 5 minutes thinking if I wanted to do this or not. Then I ripped off the first few shingles, and there was no going back. Did this last October as well. I knew it was about to get cold, but our roof might not last the winter. I've never shingled before, but a friend came to help. That was a terrifying 2 days, haha. Parachute jump. My life is now no longer in my hands. Oh well. Geronimo. First time I went skydiving was a tandem jump, and the guy told me on the ground once we get in the door we'll rock back and forth 3 times. On the 3rd time forward just roll out the door. So, me being the trusting sort thought that was a solid plan. We get up to altitude, open the door. I put my feet on the little platform and cross my arms, just like he told me to. The rocked back once and pushed us out the door immediately. My only thought was that wasn't 3. Oh fuck, we are falling. My first tandem jump was in Russia and I speak no Russian. We were in the doorway and my guy's like, and I was like, okay, the Rosho, and then we were off. Walrus was Paul? Wait, if the walrus was Paul, who is the Eggman? During takeoff on my first ever flight at the age of 30, I have a real intense fear of heights. It's funny, I've recently, over the last 10 years or so, developed a fear of heights. It really only applies on balconies or tall bridges, but in an airplane it's like I don't care. It's weird. I hate look over edges. So maybe I have a fear of falling more than heights. Like looking out a plane window is fine, but if my head's against the glass it's not. I can rock climb all day, but once I get to the top, can't get near an edge without being totally roped in. While motorcycling through Vietnam it was getting late, and I was running low on fuel. Too low to turn back to the previous town. If that wasn't bad enough, my bike rack broke. Luckily, a kind man and his daughter stopped to help. He knew no English outside of "I can fix," so I followed him. I wore my bags and held the rest in my lap. Entering the town, my jaw dropped. It was complete calamity. The streets were filled with people carrying 2x4s, rocks and bottles. Literally hundreds of people. It was like a war zone, with people smashing scooters and cars on fire. People yelling and fighting. A few individuals were running for their lives with mobs in tow. I can still vividly see one man's face as he looked over his shoulder and read, There were too many people to drive through, so I had to slow down to a crawl. All I kept thinking was, please don't notice me. Please don't rob me and smash my face in. Please know I'm with this kind man and his daughter. The moment lengthened as a few of the town folk started to notice me. I was scared shitless, but produced a warm smile. The smile wasn't returned. The kind man looked back, and those who were taking interest in me noticed. Can't help but think it helped. We finally breached the throng of people and pulled down an alleyway to his place. I still didn't feel safe, but I needed gas and my rack fixed. I tried to ask the man why all these people were fighting one another. He just smiled and made the drink gesture. It was during Tet, or the Vietnamese New Year. He fixed my rack, gave me some gas, and wouldn't take any money as payment. However, like Christmas, the kids receive money, so I gave his daughter a fat wad of cash. With his blessing. About 45 minutes later I arrived safely at my hostel in Vanna. Just so everyone knows, the Vietnamese people are some of the warmest and kindest people I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. So helpful, so caring, so giving without expecting anything in return. When I shared this story with other Vietnamese friends I made, they said I was never really in danger. It was some town uprising. But travelers are rarely ever hurt or attacked. At worst, you might get scammed for some money. Also, Vietnam is one of the best countries to travel for a million reasons. Hiking backcountry snowboarding with a guy. Got stuck in a flat area and needed to hike out in deep powder. It was getting dark and kept coming out of thick trees to 50-foot plus cliff areas. It was getting darker, and we didn't have much light left, and finally came out to another cliff area with about a 10-foot cliff, 20 feet of landing, and then a second 10-foot cliff area that had a narrow landing to an open glade. It was either go for it and don't fall and get hurt, or start making a snow tunnel and get ready to sleep on the mountain for the night at East Vale Chutes in Colorado. We both made it through the cliff jumps safely, but it was sketchy. When we got to town we both had a couple tall whiskeys in the first bar we got to, and I was still shaking. Could have possibly died if we had to stay on the mountain overnight, or got seriously hurt and then died making the jumps to get to an area we could get down as it was getting dark. But it was either jump or start making a snow shelter. We were definitely not prepared with backcountry gear and got lost in the area, even though we had both ridden it a few times with some experienced people who had taken us down before. Scary and something I will never forget. That feeling of being in the mountains when it's getting dark and being far away from shelter is a truly unique style of terrifying. I was in a similar situation once. Psychedelics. Particularly DMT because it all happened so quickly and intensely. Salvia. Never again. Only lasts 5 minutes. But holy shit does it feel like an eternity. It's like your entire reality gets smashed into thousands of pieces and you're desperately trying to piece it back together. Or getting thrust into the space between the multiverses, and you're trying to figure out which one you belong in again. Having your consciousness merged with a red solo cup on the dresser is the kind of experience a man needs no more than one of in his life. I love reading salvia trip reports. Walking into a MMA fight and the cage closes behind you. How did it go? Pretty okay I would say. I got punched in the face a lot, but subbed my opponent with an armbar. It was just an amateur level fight, but you learn a lot even there. Like you don't really hear your coach, you are way too consumed by what's going on, at least in the first few fights. Also, you can't really improvise, so a game plan is pretty important, because you will just revert to the basics you practiced. Also, you get f***ing tired as fuck. Just stuff you don't really understand if you're never in a fight. Getting in the ambulance after suffering a grand mal seizure from alcohol withdrawals. When I finally said enough is enough and decided I needed to quit drinking before it killed me, I thought I could detox on my own as I was terrified of hospitals. I was wrong. I spent a week detoxing in the ICU. And now, almost a full year later, I'm still very happily sober, and I'm completely thriving. I've witnessed 2 friends cease from alcohol withdrawals. It's crazy. One of my friends fell back into alcohol and nearly died from liver failure. Through some sort of a miracle he survived and is doing well. I can remember having what was supposed to be our last conversation on the phone. He wasn't supposed to make it through the weekend. Good job. I'm happy for you. Canoeing over a waterfall. First time I did a waterfall I thought I was gonna die. I'd been whitewater kayaking for over a year. Had all my safety trained friends there with me. Yet that feeling of going over and looking down at the hole just made me go yep. I've gone too far. Yelling boof helps. Mountain biking with some friends on a new trail, which wasn't even a bike trail. We hiked most of the way up since it was too steep to ride up. Carried our bikes all the way up. Rested at the top for a bit and then rolled over the edge. I remember as my front tire crested and gravity started taking over I thought, there's no way I'm stopping now. Unless a tree stops me. Edit. Wow, this really blew up. Rock on. Who all wants to get a group ride going? I know a similar feeling. I was mountain biking too, and out of some really dumb instinct I pulled the front brake way too hard. It wasn't my bike, so I didn't know it well. Luckily I didn't break anything, but when I started taking off it was a really bad feeling. I made a budget yesterday to figure out how much I'd need to move out. If I work 2 more hours than planned at a starter job I've lined up, I could do it easily, with all the optional expenses. That's when it hit me that I'm not in college anymore, and I actually could have the money to live independently. One piece of advice: build up some savings before you move out. Like 3 to 6 months of rent savings. Yay, this is the best advice you're gonna hear. If shit hits the fan, like the odorous excrement that's spinning above us currently, then you have a monetary cushion. When my abusive husband was doing his weekly ritual of interrogating me and accusing me of some made up infidelity and goes, well, what's the deal here? Are we just done? Before I could stop myself I was like, yeah we're done. He didn't know until that moment that I had already spoken to a divorce lawyer and the police and had all my ducks in a row to take the off. But I was planning on actually meeting with the lawyer before I told him. So then it was 2 weeks of awful Jekyll and Hyde bullshit before I could leave. I have to say, even though I was like, oh shit, it did feel so fucking good to say it though. Fuck that guy. Amen. Fuck that guy. Glad you got out. You've reached the end. You're a star. Destroy the subscribe button for more like that.